Welcome to the Snapscale Show, hosted by Mike Yablonowitz and Nathan Bush. In every episode, we explore the real challenges and breakthroughs happening in modern healthcare operations, from navigating compliance to virtual staffing and emerging technology. You will hear real stories from clinics, learn from healthcare leaders, and uncover practical strategies that help you run a smoother, more efficient practice, without losing focus on what matters most: patient care. Snapscale exists to take the pressure off your front office and administration work, so you can get back to doing what you love. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get the latest episodes, and visit snapscale.com to learn more. Let's simplify healthcare operations together. This is the Snapscale Show.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. At Snapscale, we work with hundreds of practices across the country that are feeling the same pressure. They're overworked staff, the rising costs, and they're feeling this patient care slipping through the cracks. Well, we created the Snapscale platform, not just to solve staffing, but to really give clinicians their peace of mind back. That's what it's really about, right? That's why you get into practice, is that you have a passion for patient care and peace of mind. Today's show, Dr. Mahajan is a real-world example of that mission in action. Dr. Mahajan is a podiatric physician, innovator in regenerative foot and ankle care. Dr. Mahajan is the founder of the Podiatry Institute of Michigan in Taylor, Michigan. As a board-certified podiatric physician, the surgeon, Dr. Mahajan also specializes in foot and ankle care with progressive focus on regenerative medicine. This is going to be fascinating, even if you've been in the podiatric industry, or even outside of that, if you're wanting to learn a little bit about his cutting-edge technology that he's using today. Is the REMI Class 4 laser and platelet-rich plasma injections. This really helps patients to avoid surgery and recover faster from chronic pain, tendon injury, and neuropathic conditions. Dr. Mahajan is passionate about involving the patient experience through responsiveness, efficiency, and innovation, both clinically and operationally. So that's what we're going to talk about today. He is an early adopter to the healthcare virtual assistant staffing solution and has successfully implemented Snapscale's VA to establish his front desk, reduce missed calls, and increase patient satisfaction. Whether we're addressing these complex podiatric conditions or reimagining how modern healthcare operates, Dr. Mahajan is a bold voice for practical innovation in healthcare. I'd like to welcome to the show Dr. Mahajan. How are you? You're muted here. Let's unmute you.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that fantastic introduction. I'm very happy.
Yeah, it's super excited to have you. You've been a client of Snapscale now, and if there's anybody in the audience during the show at all, Dr. Mahajan, they're welcome to go ahead and submit their comments in the comments, whether you're watching on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. Those comments come directly to us, and we can either respond during the show or we can respond afterwards if we don't have the time to get to every single one of those questions. So I just want to give you and the audience a heads up. Feel free to submit your questions online, guys, at any time during the show, and we'll either weave them in or get to them at the very end if we have enough time. I also want to take a second and tell you guys to go over to snapscale.com/blog. If you go to snapscale.com/blog, that is where our blog site is residing. There's tons of information and content. In fact, there'll be a recap of this show eventually that will go up on that blog site. And so just want to take a second and make sure you guys are all aware of how to get to that information. But thank you very much, Dr. Mahajan, for joining. And before we get too far into it, can you tell the audience a little bit about your practice and who you serve and your unique approach?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. So I started my practice in 2020, right? As the pandemic started, that's when I came out of residency. So to get an idea, I was supposed to go out to Arizona. I had a position lined up out there. That position went away because of the pandemic. The clinic closed down temporarily. They couldn't afford to bring somebody on. So I ended up opening up my practice. I'm here in Taylor, Michigan. which is close to where I did my residency program. So solo practice, okay, right out of the gate. And I open up from scratch. So, no established clientele. So that's kind of how I started. And I've just been growing the practice ever since then.
Yeah, absolutely. Growing practices, that can be a little stress and a little challenge. Tell just before we get too far into like the virtual assistant or even telling people kind of about your unique technology, what was that process like opening up and growing? Like, how did that work for you? Did you start hiring right away? Like, walk me through kind of that whole startup.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I kind of just went into it not really knowing all the steps that were going to be necessary, but you just have to figure it out as you go. Just like a lot of things in life, you kind of figure them out as you go. And so what I did initially, I hired somebody right away. Okay, I hired one employee to start out with, and I was here 20 hours a week in the clinic, and other than that, I was trying to get myself credentialed at the wound care center. There's a hospital right across the street from me as well that I was credentialed at, or that I still am credentialed at. I went across the street. I would sit there, when we didn't have any patients, just hustling, seeing the doctors come in, talking to them, passing out business cards, shaking hands, kissing babies, all of it. So, that's kind of what you have to do to start out. Now, my employee at the time, there's not that much going on some days. And I wanted to keep my overhead costs down as well, right? So I only had the one employee. I didn't, I didn't have more employees than that. Now I ran into issues. What happens if your employee gets a flat tire? What happens if they're sick? Things like that. So I kind of had to evolve from there. And that's what I kind of meant as, kind of figuring it out as I went. So that's kind of how I started off as far as the hiring process. And then as we got a little bit busier, I've kind of delineated the different processes as far as front desk, back of the house, the MAs. And so they have their own duties. But yeah, that's kind of how I went, started off with that.
Yeah, I would imagine then from starting off, it starts to pick up and gets a little bit busier. And then you have the potential for clinician burnout or front desk burnout or turnover. What are you seeing across your industry right now with how that looks?
Yeah, Nathan, that's a great question. And I don't think that is unique to podiatry or Michigan itself. I think that's something that's happening all across the country. And as you know, different insurance payers are getting, it's just getting more and more difficult to deal with them, right? Some of them, I'm not going to name names here, but there are reports that certain insurances out there, 30% denials right out of the gate, right? And they make you fight and figure out how you're going to get that money. So physician burnout, yeah, that's a real thing. That is something that I see across a lot of different people. Some of the older generation of physicians are a little bit apathetic towards it, I think, because they're like, all right, well, I'm on my way out. I'm going to retire. I don't have the energy to fight the good fight. I don't have the energy to voice my opinion. But, the physicians that I talk to in the area, yeah, they're, I have to see so many patients a day to maintain what we have right now, just to maintain, right? I have to see so many patients a day, and that number is going up as the reimbursements go down. There are physicians in this area. I'm in Taylor, Michigan here. I know there are physicians who have left this area for greener pastures, meaning areas that have maybe better insurance payers. I think it is really hard now for small practices to survive because of the cost of medicine, just the cost of, rent, paying your employees, paying the phone bill, paying your electric bill, the cleaning lady, my malpractice insurance. My malpractice insurance went up this year across the country for podiatrists because claims are on the rise. So healthcare is moving in a direction that, from where I'm sitting, that is unsustainable for a lot of people. And one of my excuse me, I'm in a solo practice, but one of my good friends, he was actually my roommate in podiatry school. He's on the other side of the country. He's on the West Coast, but he's part of a larger group. But that group is, he's not a partner in that group. So, he has told me every month they have meetings, and all of the non-partners, they get talked to, like, hey, why aren't you seeing more patients? We need to bring in more money. We need to bring in more. And he was telling me, he's like, man, I already see as many people as I can possibly see in a day. Like, I can't see any more people. So yeah, the burnout's going to come, it's coming really quick for some people, especially in my age range, I guess, because of, people are still paying off student loans, getting married, buying our first houses coming up. So there's a lot of costs associated and you have to see more and more people, more and more patients to survive on an insurance-based system.
Yeah, I mean, those are some massive pain points, not just in podiatric medicine, but across the board. We're seeing this, physical therapists, reduced reimbursements, direct primary care. A lot of them are just leaving the insurance system altogether and trying to figure out a different structure. 100%, so
100%.
This is happening across the board. So let's rewind a little bit and let's talk a little bit about what was breaking down at your front desk in terms of what were your patients experiencing, what were you experiencing prior to hiring Snapscale?
Yeah, so prior to hiring Snapscale, so I was here 20 hours a week, and we were here, when I wasn't here, my front desk was here, okay? Now, the biggest thing is, how do you monitor that person is actually doing work while you're not here? And are patients getting the care that they need? Okay, so those two things were the biggest things. I had patients complaining that they couldn't get through to my staff, even at times that we were here. And that was due to either people just not picking up the phone, or I honestly don't know what else. Probably people not picking up the phone, but also difficulty returning messages or getting a call back from our office. But then, yeah, definitely realized it one day when I was in, because I give people the benefit of the doubt, and I guess that kind of hurt me in this case, where one day I was supposed to be doing a surgery across the street at the hospital, and the patient, it was an elective surgery, the patient canceled. Okay, so he didn't call the operating room or the hospital or anybody to let us know that he was going to cancel. He didn't call the office, so we just, everyone showed up. We're waiting there. The patient was supposed to be there for the preoperative, stuff that you do before the surgery, and patient just never showed up. So 30 minutes went by. okay, patient's not showing up. We have to cancel the surgery because the operating room is, they don't have any more times in the day to reschedule. So long story short, I ended up going back to my office. Okay, my staff was already supposed to be there at this time. Nobody's there at the office. The phone's ringing. So I'm sitting there. I'm like, what is going on here? An hour later, my staff showed up, and they were surprised that I was there. Like, oh, we thought you were in surgery. And I was like, I was supposed to be, but you all are supposed to be here. So that was a big wake up call that they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. So that was a big pain point for me.
What did you do to try to solve that problem? I mean, prior to Snapscale, was there any solutions that you put in place, or was that just kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back? Like, what did you do to try to rectify that?
I mean, the only thing that I could do at the time was try to. So there's two options. One, first thing, that those staff had to go. They had to go. I had to hire somebody else. Okay, so but then it's the same situation you're in. Do you trust that person? Are they going to actually do the work? Do I need to hire someone else? Do I need to hire an office manager and pay the office manager a salary to be here and make sure that they're doing their work, right? So it's just, additional cost of having someone else to oversee them as well.
Not to mention having to retrain all these people again.
Yeah, absolutely. Having to retrain. And then, even if I were to hire an office manager to do, I know that the office manager is going to do what the office manager is supposed to do. Do I know that they're supposed to be doing, do I know that the office manager is trained to know what to tell the staff? So those were my options. And then, I definitely had to let go of the staff that I had, hire some new staff on, and figure it out. And so that's kind of when I started talking to different people, and that's when I came across this idea for a virtual assistant.
Yeah. So how did that transpire? What were the thoughts that you were having, and what steps did you take in order to make the decision to transition to utilizing a virtual assistant?
The thought process, I was just trying to find something. I had to find something. I had to find a way to be able to fix that problem. And for on my side, where the problems were employees not working like they were supposed to, the phones not being answered, people not getting their return calls, and just overall patients not being taken care of like they should be. So I was thinking, am I going to have to sink more money into this? Staffing, have more staff available? Do I need to hire an office manager full time? And again, this is early on in my practice. I'm sure a lot of people practicing have never practiced without an office manager, but I was out of necessity, I had to keep my overhead costs low, right? Coming out, no patient role, got to pay rent, got to pay the internet, et cetera, et cetera. So I was trying to keep my costs low. So the other thing is, paying someone 20 hours a week when, I'm not here, I'm only seeing patients here half that time. The other thought I had was maybe, I can get an answering service, right? Like answering services are something that exist, and how would that work out? Turns out answering services are not even that cheap to begin with. So luckily, during that search, I spoke to another physician who had a virtual assistant. He still has. He's actually added multiple. I think he's got 4 virtual assistants now. And he had great things to say. He had great things to say about the whole process and his experiences with it. So that's, when I started looking into it a little bit more.
Yeah. When you and I first talked a little while back, when we set this whole show up and being able to do this webinar, you mentioned there was a learning curve at first with your VA.
Yeah.
Can you help walk us through what that learning curve was? Because it's not a magic wand solution. You can't just wave a magic wand and fix all the problems in your business. So can you walk me through kind of what that learning curve was like with your virtual assistant and working with Snapscale at the very beginning?
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest hurdle that I had right out of the gate was, and this is within the first few days, obviously I knew, just like you hire any other employee, that employee is going to need some training. Okay. So, the biggest hurdle right out of the gate, as opposed to that employee being right in front of you face to face, is how do you teach the employee what you need to know what they need to know when that employee is not here sitting in front of you. Okay. So that was step number one. And luckily there's so many things on the internet now that are of no cost or low cost, depending on the size of your organization, that you can, one, video chat with that person, but also share your screen. So that was very helpful as far as the virtual assistant learning the EMR. Okay. And learning how to schedule patients. Number two, the second thing that was the next biggest hurdle was getting in touch with the company that runs my phones, that do my voice over IP, to be able to set up their system on the computer for my virtual assistant. Okay, so those were the two things that scared me the most. They actually turned out to be very simple fixes and at the end of the day. And then what I learned is that, so at that time that I had the virtual assistant, I had two employees in the office at that time. Okay. And one was a front desk. The other one was kind of a front desk / MA hybrid. And second step was to get those employees to train my virtual assistant in some things that I didn't really know, like looking at insurance portals to make sure patient insurances are verified, to get prior authorizations for procedures and certain CPT codes that we may be using. So things like that I didn't really even know that I needed my virtual assistant to do. Right. But I had frequent meetings, meaning once a week. Right. And that's, as a physician, once a week can be hard to fit in a meeting every week for a few weeks to talk to your virtual assistant and find out what, how's your virtual assistant doing? How are they growing? How are they, finding the transition into helping your clinic? Are there any issues that we need to address on their end? Any technical issues, any issues that they're running into actually interacting with patients. So I kind of had to, I kind of came up, my staff in the office, especially the hybrid MA, when she would answer the phones sometimes as well, she kind of knew certain things as far as what to ask for patients when they answered, when they called the office, as far as, she has heard me with patients asking these questions, right? Like patient calls, hey, I think I have an ingrown toenail. She knows what questions to ask. Is there any pus coming out? And then the next, how much pain, how long has it been going on? Certain other questions. And then she kind of knows treatment protocols how soon the patient should come in and things like that, whereas the virtual assistant didn't necessarily know those things. So when somebody would call in, the virtual assistant would start, she wouldn't know exactly what to do. She would hang up and then call us, and then we would give her, tell her what to do, and then she would call the patient back, and then the patient might ask something else, unrelated perhaps, and then she would have to hang up and get in touch with us again. And so then I learned she needs to have our algorithm. She needs to have, certain questions and certain answers ready to go. So that was the next step that I did was to do that for her. So there's a learning curve, and it's not something that, just like with any employee, it probably takes a good little bit of time for that employee to really feel comfortable doing what you want them to do, and feel comfortable doing what you want them to do, and you do have to train them, but fantastic. I'm very happy. I'm very happy with what we have.
Yeah, let's say another doctor's watching this and they have team members as well, and they're adding a virtual assistant. Do those team members then start to have concerns? Is there friction in the office because there's a virtual assistant? Did they all work together perfectly from the very beginning? What was that process like?
You know what? I think that it all worked very well right from the beginning because, and I'll tell you why, because we were able to offload some of the tasks that the in-office staff didn't like. Okay. Prior authorizations. Step one. Prior authorizations are, sometimes like pulling teeth with these insurance companies. So we were able to, I think that the staff initially, they did not know what to think, because it can seem like it's threatening their job, right? Whereas the virtual assistant is going to be able to answer the phones. They're going to be able to schedule appointments. They're going to be able to call patients for reminders. But then they realize, like, oh, this is more than that. And like, she's actually taking work off of our plate so we can focus on other things in the office. And they started to feel pretty good about it. And the other thing that I did was I kind of gave the employees a little bit more responsibility also, in that, like, hey, you're in charge of helping her. Like, if she has questions, she's coming to you first. And so, they kind of, after they realized that they were going to have a little bit less on their plate, especially with calling insurance companies for prior authorizations, that they enjoyed it. They enjoyed it more. They enjoyed coming into the office a little bit more, I think, just based off of, day-to-day interactions. And they embraced having the virtual assistant.
Yeah. So I love that, because it can feel to some clinic owners like, before I bring in this virtual assistant, I have concerns that my staff members may or may not be able to understand the importance that I'm not replacing them or getting rid of their role, that I'm augmenting and supplementing their role so that they can stay more focused on the things that you need them to do. And you did it so tactfully by kind of putting them in charge and giving them a sense of responsibility to it. And you saw probably productivity increase across the board when you did so. So I totally appreciate that. Before we get kind of into the results and the impact of what these virtual assistants do for an organization, so I have a clinician Tom. What lesson would you give clinician Tom to help them kind of understand their first VA relationship? Like 3 main things that Tom needs to know.
Okay. So first you're going to have to And Snapscale is really good about it as well. You should come up with a protocol for how to onboard your VA. And I remember, and Nathan, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I signed up, you all had you had a different doctor's protocol for helping onboard the VAs.
It's called the Med2 method. Yep.
The Med2 method. Yeah. So that was really helpful. So you're going to need some kind of protocol for onboarding the virtual assistant. The virtual assistant, you have to imagine, even if they've worked for a different clinic in the past, you're going to need to teach them certain things about your practice and also what I found helpful was actually how, write out a script for them, how actually you want them to answer the phone and speak to patients and address patients. And then the other things that I've talked about as well, just getting set up with, Google Meet, if I can say that, Nathan,
yeah.
Can I say these
communication
methods? So Google Meet is a great platform to use for the virtual assistant. One thing that it will allow you to do, or your office manager or your staff, you can have a video conference all day, basically, with your virtual assistant to make sure that your virtual assistant is, one, that they're there and that they're working. And then number two, if there's any questions, you have direct communication. Okay. Because you don't want to be sitting there like text messaging back and forth all day with your virtual assistant. There's other platforms as well. I use one called Slack. Slack is really good as well because you can have that same video communication, but I also have an app on my phone that I use, which I can send a link out to different members of my staff, and we can all get together on, we can video chat. We can all get together on one text thread. I can text people individually, but that's our method of communication. The other thing that I really like about implementing that, which I actually didn't have it implemented before, but now we have protocols for that as well. Since I initiated having the virtual assistant, I've actually got another clinician in here as well now. And so when we get results back, we get MRI, pathology results, what have you. When those results come back, the staff now, the protocol is uploaded into the EMR, and then they message us via Slack. Whereas before, it's like we had a folder. It's like when the doctor comes in, you see the results, or it gets uploaded into the EMR ahead of time, but the doctor doesn't necessarily get contacted, and so I kind of realized like, we should be doing something more than this. So I hope that helped. I think, those were the biggest challenges that I faced, was figuring out how are we going to communicate with our staff member, and how are we going to make sure that we're getting the phone calls sent to that staff member. And so, you have to have a voice over IP system, I believe, for those calls to first ring here in the office and then get forwarded to the virtual assistant.
Yeah, absolutely. Even at Snapscale here, one of the voice over IP systems that we recommend is Spruce, just because it's HIPAA compliant, and we know that you can use patient HIPAA compliant communication, and it's got an IP telephony aspect to it. Weave's another one. There's a variety of different tools that you can use that are voice over IP. Dialpad's another one. These are all tools that you can use from a messaging, from a platform standpoint, but you got to pick which one's right for your organization. It sounds like, Dr. Mahajan, you like the Slack tool for internal communication, Google Meets, to be able to jump on, and then you've got your own phone system and stuff that you guys use there that has been helpful for you. Before we get into Dr. Mahajan's results, and before we get into his RIMI laser therapy and rejuvenative medicine approach to podiatrics, I want to take a second, and Mike Yablonowitz couldn't join us, but there was a segment in a previous webinar that we did that I had clipped out specifically for today, and I think it fits in right here. And this is Mike talking about not outsourcing your core competencies, but what to outsource. And so let Mike share that with you guys here.
You just can't outsource, what makes your business special. This resonates along all industries. For e-commerce companies, it's about you don't outsource your key marketing messaging that only one person knows how to do. You don't, for a sales organization, you don't outsource your sales, right? In the medical practice, it's funny that I'm going to say this you're not going to outsource like the surgery or the practice, but you don't really outsource the people around in your practice that make it great. So what I mean by that is that, remember, outsourcing is really about augmentation in my mind still, even though we get more of the I can't find anybody to come, really it's about helping the people in the practice that have been there, right? A lot of times, Nathan, we get a doctor that comes to us saying, we can't, I've had my, front desk person for 10 years, but it's been a revolving door, find the next person, the next person, the next person. What we do is we say, okay, doc, and we become the best friend of that person that's been there for 10 years, because that person has the golden keys to what makes the practice special. And then we just build a team around them, to what makes it perfect. Because remember also, it's not really just about giving the resources, so to speak, and the outsourced talent, right? The big part of what makes this work is the political component. That's the wrong way to say it, but it's being one with the practice, right? And that's when we meet that person that's been there for 10 years. We become ingrained in the culture. They know that we're there as a partner, right? And not just like people to stick in and disappear.
So, Dr. Mahajan, how do you feel about what Mike was saying? Did he kind of hit the nail on the head for you about how to look at the outsourcing of some of the roles and responsibilities?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could follow up on that as well, yeah, absolutely. It's, sometimes it seems like it's a revolving door. So one thing that I was able to do, and Nathan, I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead here, but one thing that I was able to do with that revolving door was definitely to stabilize the in-office environment. Okay. Like there are days when, people are sick. For example, my staff, 2 employees, both had COVID at the same time. Right. And I still came in, I was able to function and run the office by myself. I saw 17 patients by myself one day while my staff was not here. Okay. The other thing that it will allow you to do is to, what's the best way to put this? When you have kind of exactly what I was saying, when your staff is out, or if you have someone that gets, for a lack of a better term, if you have someone that gets poached by another location, and I'm, speaking from experience where I had one of my staff members, I was paying, she was getting $17.50 an hour, I believe, and a cardiologist office offered her $20 an hour. Did you think she's going to leave? Yeah, she left. I can't match that extra $250 an hour. Over the course of a year. That's like I think it was almost $20,000 over the course of a year extra to have her. So that really helped us. While when she left, we were it helped to definitely stabilize it while we were going through that process of looking for someone to replace her. So we were able to, I don't want to say take our time, but we were able to conduct our interviews well and properly and not rush into hiring someone who was maybe not a good fit for the clinic. And we have that. I don't know, if that happens to other people who are watching this, if that happens in your clinics around the country, but I've had people who we have hired that they don't show up on the first day, or we have them around and then they quit a short time later without giving, notice. But what I did with that staff member who left, we ended up taking some of that money, and I was able to use that money that we weren't paying her during that time between the time, when she left to the time we hired someone else. I took that and I gave my staff members who were still here, I gave them some of that money as, kind of like a profit sharing, if you will, or, a little reward, a little bonus. Here you go, here, And what made that possible, like I said, was having that virtual assistant, which was able to stabilize, as Mike put it.
Yeah, absolutely. When we look at some of the results that you've had from the virtual assistant, I'm sure people can already kind of tell from the questions and the answers that you've given so far, some of the successes that you've had from a continuity standpoint and people that answer the phones and, from a team member, from a support standpoint, we can see all of those things. What are some of the biggest improvements that you saw to like your numbers, KPIs, ROI, performance when it comes to hiring a virtual assistant? Sorry, the hiccup.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is communication. Okay, so we have since we have gotten the virtual assistant, I have certain processes in place which really help out. Okay, so anytime after a surgery, all my post-op patients, any ingrown toenails that we do in the office, those patients are all getting calls the day after the procedure. Okay, just to make sure they're doing okay, to check on them, pain level, did they get their medications that that they need to, are they icing and elevating, do they have any questions for us? So my virtual assistant knows to do that automatically. I send her a quick message on Slack, and she does that automatically. The second thing is patients are getting callbacks in a very quickly, as opposed to before when patients were complaining that they weren't getting called back. The third thing that we implemented, as soon as I finish a progress note, or maybe not the second I finish it, but the next day after I finish progress notes, my virtual assistant goes back and she looks through the notes that have been finished, and she automatically sends them. These get faxed out to their primary care physicians, and the primary care physicians love that. They love being kept in the loop. My EMR is not one that, like the hospital system here uses Epic, which can, gather notes from everyone else that's using Epic. My EMR does not do that. So the primary care physician offices really like getting those. And I think that has helped, because they see that and they say, okay, I'm going to send more people here because we actually get a reply. We know what's happening. They send us the progress notes. So from patient care standpoint, it has helped quite a bit. And the other thing that it has allowed us to do is take some time off for ourselves, right? I don't know what other practices do when you go on vacation, for example, but when I go on vacation now, in my other physician is out on maternity leave right now, so it's just me. But I just went out of town for a few days, and I can reward my staff and say, hey, you guys don't need to come in. Go, you guys take a vacation too. Enjoy yourselves for a few days. Come back refreshed to the office. Meanwhile, my virtual assistant is still here working. She's answering the phones. We're not missing those phone calls. We're still getting patients scheduled on. If there's any issue, she just messages me on my phone, right through Slack. I'll send her a message back. And so the office is still functioning, getting things done behind the scenes, but it has allowed us to take some time off for ourselves and hopefully avoid that burnout that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, for sure. This is a chancy question, but I'm going to ask it anyways, just because, we're live and why not ask a question directly. Would you ever go back to a HVA free model, meaning not have a virtual assistant in your organization?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it makes any sense. And I'm going to come at this from the point of a small business owner right now. Okay. So, you have, and we just talked about staff leaving like a revolving door, right? But your staff that you want here as well, I'm sure that they ask for raises, right? The cost of everything is going up. And it seems like everyone out there, their pay is going up to match it, except physicians. The insurance companies keep lowering our pay, right? If my employees here, if they come in and each of them wants a 50-cent raise per hour, I did the math on that. That comes out to about $8,000 per year. Okay. 50 cents. That's it. Right. Okay. Maybe it doesn't seem like a lot, 8,000, maybe, I don't know who, we've got big group practices out there. I don't know who exactly the audience is that I'm talking to, but $8,000, that's just for the first year. What's going to happen the following year? They're going to ask for 50 cents more again. And then it's going to be another 8,000. It's going to be 16,000 from this point till 2 years from now. Right. And it's going to keep happening. Right. So, that is, I think that, one, from a business standpoint, it makes a lot of sense just to keep my overhead costs down to be able to stay open so I can be self-employed and not have to close down and join a group or join a hospital, because I don't really want to do that. And then from a patient care standpoint, I think my clinic offers great patient care, and we communicate very well with our patients. They get paperwork to us sometimes that they need paperwork for, to get back to work, or you all know, you're all physicians, you all know. I think we have great patient care because of our communication, and that is greatly appreciated by our patients, and we owe a lot to our virtual assistant for that.
Absolutely. So one thing I had here that I want to talk about with you that I don't think a lot of people have given a lot of thought to, that maybe have virtual assistants already. And so I wanted to bring this up and get your take on this, Dr. Mahajan. So if you have a virtual assistant, we've been talking a lot about what the virtual assistant can do, but you got to do it with the right partner, because you can go out and get a virtual, so you can Google virtual assistants online right now and find any litany of different number of companies that are going to that could provide virtual assistants or virtual support, the virtual staff members, and help reduce the cost. But it's important to also do this in a HIPAA-compliant way. It's important to work with a partner that signs a BAA directly with your organization. It's important to work with a partner that follows our 13-point no-nonsense checklist, HIPAA compliance protocols that were designed by Digital Compliance, our third-party auditing agency that audits our organization every 6 months. It's important that when your team member comes in, they badge in, or they wand into the office, they put their phone in a locker, they have managerial backbone and structure and support, the culture of HIPAA compliance. How important was HIPAA in making your decision with Snapscale?
I don't know. I don't know if I thought about it that much, to be honest with you. Obviously, we needed someone that did have the HIPAA compliance, but you came highly recommended from the other physician who I had spoken to. So yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, I know.
Yeah, no, it's a great answer, because your feelings and sentiment on what I just brought up is very similar, Dr. Mahajan, to a lot of clinicians and other physicians. Is that, they'll do the HIPAA training once a year, and if a claim or something came up, they deal with it. But most clinicians, they're not culturally HIPAA conscious. And for us, some people could think about it as an afterthought. And for our organization, it's really a main feature that differentiates the Snapscale service from anything that's out there on the market, from the cultural aspect of the way we designed our organization specifically for you, the physician. So you never even had to think about it or worry about it. In fact, you probably haven't had any HIPAA issues or anything to deal with since you started working with Snapscale. In fact, I know you haven't, because we have a culture of protection of private health information. And so I thought it was important to bring that up before we get into talking about your Remy laser. Any final thoughts on kind of that?
No, I think you summed it up very well. I think that, yeah, I mean, I know we needed it, but I didn't really think about it too much.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the major challenges that a lot of people will have if they just go with any virtual assistant organization. And you can take what Dr. Mahajan has taught you, and you can use this information however you want to. I just like to make sure that I share with you some protection and warning to make sure you do your due diligence and make sure that company isn't just doing something that could potentially put your organization at risk. So make sure you do your due diligence and you be careful in your approach to selecting your virtual assistant. So let's talk about this Remy laser, because I was fascinated whenever we had our initial discussion about what you're doing in rejuvenative medicine and how that whole process works. What is that, and why should physicians care about this?
Yeah, so I've kind of been getting into regenerative medicine over the course of the past year, and in the foot and ankle world, people have sprains and strains quite often. Different pains, whether in my area, there's people that are working in factories on hard concrete floors who are coming in, with different areas of pain. We get people who have torn tendons, torn ligaments, right? So some of these people, number one, some of these people are not good candidates for a surgery if they were to need a surgery. And the second thing is that some people really don't want it. For example, I had a gentleman who had a torn peroneal tendon. He's a truck driver, self-employed, right? He couldn't take time off for a tendon surgery to repair the tendon, and the time off that he would be, in a boot, physical therapy afterwards, the whole deal. Basically, his business would fold, right? And so that was one of the first times I kind of started thinking about different treatment options, different treatment methods that we can use, and the Remy laser is a fantastic. The Remy laser. So the tendon tear. Going back to the tendon tear. I'm sorry I didn't finish that story. But with that patient, we used the injection that you didn't, that you may have been coming up to. It is I use a biologic injection as opposed to the platelet-rich plasma. The biologic injection it's basically something that many of you may have heard of. It's like a skin substitute product that are all over the market right now for healing diabetic foot wounds. We do use them in surgery as well to wrap tendons and ligaments with. Basically, there's a company that has created an injectable form of this as well. So we were able to use this and the benefit of it is that it can help to restore type 1, type 2, and type 3 collagen. And so we had ordered this for that patient, and I used it in conjunction with the laser. Okay. And the laser helps to promote blood flow. It helps to decrease inflammation in the area, and it helps to decrease pain. Okay, so this patient actually did very well with that treatment. Now, my own story with the laser, how I initially started off with the laser. So I had the laser first before I looked into the biologic injection. Last year, I got very into running for whatever reason. It sounds stupid right now because I hate running now, but I got very much into running. So I ran a half marathon, did the training, ran a half marathon in May in Cincinnati, the Flying Pig Marathon, if any of you have done that one. And I did another half marathon in Ann Arbor, Michigan in June. So halfway through that second half marathon, my right foot, I started to get so much pain in my right foot. And I basically limped across the finish line. So my cousin, he has a Remy laser in his office, and I went to see him because I had people telling me, one of my friends was like, hey, you're a foot doctor, just inject yourself. Just give yourself an injection in the foot. It's like, I'm not going to inject myself in the foot. So I went to go see my cousin, and he told me about this laser that he got. And I was like, very skeptical about this laser. Okay. So he found the pain point in my foot. If this is the bottom of my foot, he pushed on it. And I almost jumped out of the chair. So he did the laser for 5 minutes, and then he pushed on it again. And I could feel it, but the pain was almost gone. So at a cellular level, it's amazing what this laser can do. It doesn't, the effects are not long lasting. It lasted about 4 hours, and then the pain started to come back. But it promotes a healing cascade. And I have found that this laser, one, it works well for pain. Some of the situations that we just talked about, as far as tendons, sprains, strains, it works well for post-operative pain, helping keep patients off of opioids for long periods of time. And recently, that's the main two reasons I got it, was for those two things. But I have found it has multiple uses as well. It can be used to cauterize burnout warts. I have tried it for that. It worked, but the patient was almost screaming the whole time because of the burning sensation. So I actually don't like to use it for that anymore. I use it also for fungal toenails. And then I've found that it has been working well for neuropathic pain. I actually just had a patient, if you look on our website, which is podiatrymichigan.com, I had a patient who gave a testimonial for the laser for nerve pain as well. So it's been pretty fantastic in the office. And it's one of those things where, if word of mouth gets out there that, there's a physician that is treating things non-surgically and getting people back to function, and maybe getting that extra step, getting these extra modalities that maybe other physicians don't have. I'm hoping that helps to helps give us a good reputation in the town, and also to drive business into the clinic.
Yeah. And so to kind of bring it full circle here, is your virtual assistant able to work with patients who call in and help schedule appointments around this Remy laser technology?
Yeah. So she does have, protocols as far as when people call in, questions that they can ask, questions that they might ask with possible answers. Okay, so she has a little cheat sheet, if you will, to look at that. I think some of what happens with the laser, I don't know how well she can describe it because she hasn't seen it in person, and she doesn't necessarily hear some of the stories, from the clinic, like that my front desk does, for example, like when the patient leaves, like, oh my gosh, like that feels great, right? Just that to the front desk staff compared to, the virtual assistant doesn't hear it, right? So I haven't had her doing that as far as the laser goes, because I'd rather have the patients come in to see us. She'll say, yeah, we have a lot of different options, including the laser. But if the patient inquires more about the laser, yeah, it's different for everyone, and the doctor really needs to evaluate you beforehand to see if you're a candidate, and he can explain more about the laser to you. So that's what we have for her to say.
No, I mean, it's imperative and important, and I wanted to bring it up to close out the entire conversation with you, Dr. Mahajan, for a training and development purposes for people who are thinking about a virtual assistant, because it's actually to your benefit as a physician that your virtual assistant uses your phone scripts and your trees, and they follow your protocols and formats, and that they don't try to get too clinical with people and answer too many questions, so that they can actually get scheduled and on your books. And what you'll notice, and what a lot of doctors have said and have seen, is actually when they have the scripted protocols, they see increased number of patients being booked. They see increased of people coming in with, who've done research and tried to kind of understand things for themselves so that they can make informed, educated decisions whenever they're having those conversations. And guys that are watching online, or whether you're on replay, you're on LinkedIn right now or YouTube, you've made it 1 hour with us, and you're probably no different. You have the same policies, same processes, same procedures going on inside of your organization. And if your staff is getting too conversational about things versus doing the role or responsibility of making sure that phone call leads to an appointment, then they're getting too much into the weeds with the patient, and that may be a simple leak inside of your marketing funnel or your bucket that keeps your business from growing, because that's what a virtual assistant does. A virtual assistant helps provide continuity and fill those leaks inside your organization, inside that marketing bucket and customer support or patient support bucket. All right, Dr. Mahajan, we're at an hour. Any final words for anybody watching when it comes to virtual assistants and what your thoughts are with working with Snapscale?
Yeah, I think that virtual assistant, I think that it is a fantastic idea. I would not go back to not having a virtual assistant. Protecting your clinic against inflation, protecting your clinic against staffing, or just providing that continuity of in the clinic, like we have previously talked about. Working with Snapscale has been fantastic. They do have, the last thing I want to mention about Snapscale, Nathan, is that Snapscale does have IT support as well, if that's another question that you might have, because I have had some times where I'm not an IT expert, and I have had some times where my virtual assistant has told me, like, hey, the phone may not be ringing on her end through the voice over IP, or actually one time her computer went down completely, and Snapscale replaced the computer for her. Snapscale has an IT system that has IT service that has helped troubleshoot some things. So Snapscale has been fantastic to me in my business. Yeah, I'll leave you with that.
Yeah, and at no additional cost. So that's the fantastic part about it. It's all part of the service. Thank you very much, Dr. Mahajan, for being a part of our program and our show today. Your business is very important to our organization, and we really appreciate all of the time that you have taken to have this conversation with other clinicians who may be considering utilizing a HIPAA-compliant healthcare virtual assistant. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan.
All right, and I'll finish up, guys, with this. We have got our HIPAA-compliant healthcare auditor who audits our organization. And here's what he had to say about Snapscale's approach to HIPAA.
Mike is an interesting example. Mr. Yablonowitz and Snapscale, previously Brobizco, or BBC Global. We don't know, HIPAA training doesn't do webinars. We don't partner with clients and help them market. My purpose of being here is not for marketing. I'm not interested in generating sales from web contacts. What I am interested in is taking information that shows up regularly and becomes problematic regularly for our clients so that you know you're conversant and know how to ask questions and know what the answer should sound like. Mike is an obsessive when it comes to compliance. The way he approached compliance when he became our customer 3 years ago was, yeah, but how do we do better? But I know what the minimums are, but you know, I've got some clients that are concerned about VAs, and what do we do to bolster, you know, Matt, honestly, how do we show up as the best in the market? And it was a year, maybe a year and a half working together on a system that didn't exist. It doesn't exist anywhere. I can tell you, we have dozens of virtual assistant platforms that work through HIPAAtraining.com, and there are probably 100 more that work through other of our peers in the industry. And the reason Snapscale is the only organization that we will do this with is because they exceeded the minimum standards, then they exceeded what were considered exceptional standards, and then they started creating their own standards that are so far and above, they're so beyond the pale that it's going to generate a new standard in what is considered remote virtual healthcare.